And welcome back to day 3 of Conexkt days. I hope you had a great start to the week with all of our different sessions on Monday and Tuesday. For those that haven't met me yet, my name is Tiffany and I will be your host for the week. What a great week to celebrate the dynamic and fast-paced nature of innovation from every angle. There is lots to learn and lots to implement so we can co-create a better future using innovation as a tool. Today we will have 2 sessions to discuss about unleashing the potential of place branding and demystifying artificial intelligence. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us. We are very excited to have you. As I have already mentioned, we designed this series so that you can enjoy it during your lunch break or an evening, depending on your time zone and your level of Zoom fatigue. And we know from our speaker yesterday that some of you wanted to watch Crown, but we kind of all know how that turns out, so we think you better spend your evening with us anyways. As well, as I mentioned before, on our website, conexkt.world/2020, we have a listing of all of our speakers and their dedicated session times. So head over there to keep track of what's going on. Be aware that it is both listed in Pacific and Central European time. We've seen people have started to use Conversation Starter, which is great. There have been over 55 one-on-one conversations so far. Again, this is a great tool to meet some fellow participants, and we have about 173 people registered. So make sure you head over and create your profile to meet some of them. If you missed out on our sessions from previous days, don't worry. We already have them uploaded onto our YouTube channel, and we will send that link to you in the chat below. If you're at work or at home, we strongly recommend that you hook up your headphones to avoid any echo. As well, we do want to hear from you, and there are Q&A sessions throughout the evening and morning. So put your questions in the Q&A button below. Whenever you think of it, send it, and we will get to it as soon as we can. As well, we will have some different polls throughout the sessions, like the one that will pop up on your screen here. And we are wondering, why did you decide to attend the event today? What was one of the biggest benefits for you? We would absolutely love to know. There will be a poll that will pop up. There we are. Why was it that you decided to join us today? We're very glad that you did, and we're hoping it's to learn something new and not because there's nothing on Netflix. We got a couple more coming in here. We spent about 30 seconds to let people get their answers in. Let's see what it is. Learning something new. All right, perfect. The theme of this series is short, insightful talks on innovation crisis. Our team wanted to take some time to reflect upon the events during 2020 and its impact on innovation. It is essential to think of innovative solutions and implement them amid all of these global crises with a critical lens. We brought a team together to prepare a special week on these topics, together with keynote speakers from our communities. We hope that you will leave these sessions with ideas to ponder and help you navigate these challenging times. Today, we are delighted to have with us Dr. Renaud Vuignier, as well as Heather Skinner. On the event website, you can find out more about our speakers, and we will put links to their LinkedIn profiles on there as well. Our first speaker, Dr. Renaud Vuignier, is one of our very own wizard of strategy at Conexkt. And Renaud, I believe we will bring you live, and I believe you're coming to us from Beijing, China. Let's bring Renaud up. I believe he has a very early morning over in China, but I'm glad that he chose to spend it here with us. Welcome.
Hello everybody.
Hello, what time is it there?
So it's 3:30. So it's quite early in the morning.
Dedication, we love it. Perfect. Here at Conexkt, we love to work around the clock. I will let you take it from here, Renaud.
So hello everyone, thank you very much for having me. It's quite early, so I hope I will be still very performant in my presentation, but do not hesitate to interrupt me, to have questions in the chat box. I'm happy to answer and get back to you. So first I'm gonna share my slide with you. 1 second, so then I can share my slide and start the presentation. Here you are. So I'm going to talk about place branding today because, as you know, the topic is the crisis innovation. And I think, especially in these pandemic times, very hard for all of us and all over the world, even in China. Of course, now we are maybe at another stage, but it was a very tricky situation and it remains quite difficult, and we do have the impact. And in this crisis, I think we should think about how can we really bring back innovation in the regions. And one of the tools is place branding. So I'm going to talk a bit about the concept, what it is, and then talk about how can we implement a strategy. So from a perspective of the policy side, or for different people that could on a daily life use place branding as a good tool. So first of all, what it is. And place branding refers to the fact that you can use the concept of brand that comes from marketing originally, and you can use it for places, because brand are symbolic constructions that try to trigger positive associations to enhance identification, differentiation, and try to improve attractiveness. So it's quite broad like this, but I think it's quite clear that when I tell you the name of a place, for example, I will try to Geneva, then you will associate it with some different things in your mind. And the goal of place branding is try to use it to convince you that you should maybe once visit Geneva. Maybe you don't have no clue about Geneva, but you know it's about it's in Switzerland. So you will have the nation brand Switzerland that matters. And here it will trigger associations. And what we try to do as a strategist and in the policy sector and in different sectors, we try to use place branding as a tool to improve attractiveness. So first of all, I think it has to be clear that it's not about selling something. Too many times when we talk about brands, we emphasize the marketing aspect of selling things. And actually, it's not about this. It's really about compelling people to discover, live, and innovate within the space. What I mean by that is the goal is really to convince the people that when I say Geneva, you will hear about the stories, you will have emotions that will make you want to discover this place. And then with place branding, you will try to put forward the different attributes of the place, the advantages, the strengths, and even discuss the weaknesses in order to engage with the different target audience, to convince them in the end that it matters to really get to know the place and then maybe be involved in the different touch point you can have with the place as a tourist, as an entrepreneur, or any kind of target you can be. So what I wanted to emphasize also is that the place branding strategy is really something that can reinforce the synergies in a region, because it gets to gather the different people together. So what I mean by this is that place branding, you need to first, almost always, the starting point is about, is my place a brand? And of course, for very famous places, you have no big discussion, because, for example, New York started in the 70s, the I Love New York place branding initiative, and it was really something big, and everybody in the world knows about New York. But many small places can also be a brand. And actually, some consultants even say that any place is a brand. It's just that sometimes it's unknown, and you have to make it happen. And that's why the process as such can be strategic and can reinforce the different synergies you can have between the people, because branding, it's actually gathering different sectors and different domains. What I mean by this is that you have the tourism that is quite obvious when I talk about places. The first kind of thing we can have in mind is visiting the place. And this is why place branding was used for very long, even for 1 or 2 centuries. place branding was used in order to attract tourists in a place. Oh, let's come to Europe, let's come to visit Switzerland, the famous mountains, and you have all those posters about Switzerland that try to attract visitors. But that's only one aspect, because now place branding is more and more used in a holistic approach. It means it can also be used for economic development. For example, you will use place branding to attract enterprises and investors. And here, of course, it's the same brand, but then you will maybe have different strategies and different marketing packages that you will use to attract a specific target group. But all in all, there should be a consistency about the brand, and that's something that what is often missing in our communities. For example, if you analyze Switzerland, sometimes we tend to think into silos. So you have the economic development that will try to push for one aspect of the brand, and that will, for example, Geneva brand it as great for innovation, and will have different advantages that are not actually totally fine and totally aligned with what the way the Geneva is presented as a tourism place. And actually place branding should try to gather the people together just to make sure that you really take the full of what you can do with the place. Because actually, for example, a tourist that will visit a place will also be a potential investor at some point. Maybe he will be convinced that he should, once in his time, innovate in the place. And then also, in addition to economic development and tourism, you also have the residents that also are the big players in the brand. Because first, if you choose to live in a place, it means you are convinced by the place, it means you know about its identity, and you are going to be a key player in place branding. So that's why it's very important to connect, not only have people branding the place abroad to attract companies, but have all the stakeholders talking together to really analyze together what are the strengths and how should we together promote the same place, because in the end it is always about the same place. And that's what I want to push here. It's about the process. So we try to summarize all the place branding strategy into a few steps. So of course it's way more complex, and we can discuss the approach later on with the Q&A and also with the great guest speakers we have here, expert in place branding, Heather. But if we now try to summarize, I think we can have key milestones. So first of all is the initial analysis. What is the place we are talking about? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Is it known enough? And if it is not known, why? Is it such a small place that has nothing to offer? Or is it just because we don't have the channel or we didn't do enough to make it known? And then you need to gather the different actors and the stakeholders, the residents, the companies, the people promoting the place. You need really to have stakeholder involvement to make sure people talk to each other and define a common vision. Because if you have a strong common vision, then the place branding strategy will be also stronger. Then you need to define a strategic plan. And here we are more into the marketing side, in the sense that together you need to be strategic, to think about the different priorities, the way you position the place. It means, for example, what is your place positions in comparison with other places. And here it's a lot also of benchmark, of knowing the place in comparison with others. And then you have the targeting and segmentation aspects to take into account. And then you can come with an executive plan. And this executive plan is something that gets very concrete. And here you can have one of the place branding communication strategy. And that's one aspect. But often we reduce the whole process to just one aspect that should come in the end. And that's something really important to emphasize here. And then, of course, you have the monitoring part and the evaluation, in order to really make sure you're not too linear and you get back and to improve your strategy with agility. So of course you should really monitor at all stages and get back. If you, for example, need to redefine the strategic plan, you can get back. But I think it's a good overview of the milestone we presented here in this slide. And it makes sense really to have this on paper and to take the time to think about each step. What can we do? What are we going to do? Because often we talk about place branding as a logo and we start right from the start, even without analysis, without building common vision, without strategic plan. We start with one of the small communication component that is important, but that is not the big part of place branding. Where to start? So as I said, I think the first thing is really to know the region, analyze it, and that's why it's the first step. And I think here we should not neglect the fact that even if you don't have outputs from the start, you should really take the time to know your region. Because of course, when you are in a place, you have people that have been living the place for ages and they know the identity and they also feel legitimate to talk about the identity. So you should make sure to include them in the different aspects you have. And then you also have maybe new people that just came and got a great position in the tourism industry and they promote the place, but actually they don't really fit with the identity. So they should really align to make the place brand strategy stronger. Then put in place a process. And here I think the process I described was quite clear. And to do this in the best way, different places and especially large places and big cities need to really have a structure to do this, because in a small, maybe in a smaller village, you could have a working group that can gather and try to build the stakeholders engagement and all things like this. But in big cities, you need really to have a structure. And one of the thing we could see in different places in Europe and also in America is places that decide to set up a mission called mission attractiveness or mission attractivité. And the idea is to have a committee that is in charge of the whole process. So they will not first start with a logo. As I said, they will really start like, okay, now we are in charge of putting a place branding strategy. So we will start with some analysis to make sure we have data, evidences, how is our places seen abroad, how is our places seen inside by the citizens, how do we do with this and discuss and really put in place then a process. And then that's why the third point is really make the process public. And I think here we have to learn about the best practices because it's all about including the public. For example, so many times you have people in the government that have, of course, the authority to develop strategy in the economic development sector, in tourism industry, to attract talents. But then it comes public very late, when it's too late to engage and to also adapt the strategy itself. And I think here there are also really ways to co-create with the different people of the place. It can be virtually for a while, it can be with big events, with small workshops, but you really need to make sure to have a process. And I think here, for example, you would also engage with journalists that then can also understand a bit better, because if you analyze some place branding strategies, you had journalists quite critical because you spend lots of money and then they say, yeah, but in the end you spend money for communication and logos, but what does it mean? How do you see the impact? And actually, if you have a process that make sure to involve everybody from the start, you can really make it a big success. And then share the vision and develop the tools. And that's why it's important, again, that it comes only at the first place. That's where you develop marketing tools and different things that you can really shape together. And you even had places that said, but actually the place brand, as a communication tool, should be developed by different people, including the residents. So they decided to put in place a place brand box, for example, and say, okay, we offer part of the brand, and then the people can use it and even co-create and co-develop it with us to make sure we can then have a place branding strategy that fits with the different people leaving the place. And I think now we are really at a stage where we need to be more transparent about place branding, because we are not anymore at a stage where we can promote place only with big slogans and only with positive aspects. So that's the main point. And then I will not go into details with the next few slides, but I just wanted to show that we can really map this out to make sure we have a process that makes sense for all. And here, for example, I wanted to separate the strategic path, where you would have, as I said, the mission attractiveness that you could put in place, and they will be in charge of the strategy. But then at the same time, you also need people doing the job and making the follow-up of this mission and make it alive with also tangible aspects, with some things online. And here you could think, if you're, for example, a government, you could think to have a provider that you would mandate, or consortium of providers. And here I would insist of having maybe communication companies involved, but not only. And if you can really have a consortium with people that also know about strategy and more than visual identity, it would really make the whole process more successful. And then the stakeholders' involvement and management, that's really key, as I said. And here I wanted really to split the different levels. So you have the strategy, and then you have the place branding concept, where you go one step below, I would say, and you define a bit more what you understand about the brand and what associations you want to trigger in the people's mind. And then you go in with the toolbox and platform, and they really, of course, should align with the whole strategy, but it's a bit more operational. And then you really have the executing plan, and you would hear, for example, concrete events, and you would manage some projects, because we often will talk about the projects, but the most important thing strategically is really to have the whole process designed very well. So now the last slide is exactly, if you put in place this process, first, you should never think that you have to have everything clear before starting. It really, starting and really having some questions about place branding is really the start, the big start. And what I wanted to highlight here is that you can be, it can be something very small, and you can start with what we call quick wins. For example, you think you have residents that really are convinced about one of the attributes to put forward, and you just gather them and you go on with an executive plan about this, but don't forget to have the whole strategy in mind and to be aware of what you want to do. But then you can also step by step and slowly improve, and then you have a wide range of possibilities to have in the end maybe a very strong place brand strategy that some places already have and can afford. But as a small place, you can really start from small and really launching the process. I would say the first thing is really to gather the different people and make them know what is place branding and what makes sense to go on with. So that was the main inputs. I hope it was concise enough, and I look forward to the discussion, and also right now for the talk from Heather. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renaud. That was an amazing talk. And now we'll be moving on to our second speaker, Dr. Heather Skinner. I think she's joining us from Greece, I believe. Heather, let's pop up on the screen. Hello.
Kalispera in Greek. Yes, I'm joining you from Greece. It's almost 10 o'clock in the evening here, so I'm at the opposite end of the day to Renaud. But hopefully my talk will complement what he's talked about, because at the end, he was giving some really good ideas about how to do place branding. And I've got some warnings about make sure you do it right and try not to get it wrong. So I'm going to...
I'll let you take it from... Oh.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm going to start sharing my screen now, if you bear with me one moment. Sorry about this. Hold on. Right. This will work. It will work, I promise you. There. And hopefully you can now see my screen, yes? Can somebody unmute and confirm that you can see the screen?
No, we can't see your screen, Heather.
Okay, we'll start that again then if you don't mind. We've tried this. Do you know what?
There we
you
are.
Wouldn't believe.
Oh.
Oh, you can see it now. I've just cleared
no,
it.
sorry.
Oh, gosh. Sorry. You said you couldn't see it. Oh, bear with me then. I'm going to have to go it the long way round now. Sorry, I will try and make this as quick as possible. Sorry, wrong one.
Not a problem.
Hold on.
We can see your screen now.
Right. Yes, but what we don't have is my slides up yet. Hold on. Conexkt Day's presentation. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Right. Well, I'm not going to talk very long. You get to see wonderful screen. So, unleashing the potential of place branding. I am a senior fellow of the Institute of Place Management that's in Manchester Metropolitan University, but we are an international organization. I've been looking at place branding as a subject area as an academic for years. And one of the things that I find, and Renaud touched on, is the fact that some people think place branding is just the logo, just the slogan. And of course, that's often because they don't understand it, one of the points that Renaud finished on. So just looking at this is 5 different ways in general that I find place branding and place marketing are talked about in practice and in academia. Number 1, that place marketing and place branding are 2 completely different, separate constructs. There's another view that they overlap. There's a third view that in my way of thinking is more problematic, that place marketing equals place branding and the 2 terms can be used interchangeably. There's another view that puts place branding primacy and place marketing is part of that. My take, and I think is the most useful one, is that place branding, like any other type of branding, is part of marketing. So in these terms, place branding is part of place marketing. When we market places, we don't just do the branding, we do lots of other things. We target, segment our different audiences. That's marketing, that's not branding. Branding is about identification and differentiation. It's not everything else. But marketing is only one of the things that we do with places when we manage them. We have our infrastructures, we have sanitation, we have housing, we have lots of things to think about. So in my view, locating place branding under place marketing and place marketing then under place management gives us a better view of where branding falls in the overall management of places. So as I say, it's usually undertaken, my perspective has always been from the tourism side. So destination marketing organizations, as Renaud also said, quite often we build a brand to try and get people to come and visit us. And in the case of cities particularly, place branding and place brand management has been used specifically to attract people to invest and visit the place. And it's all about competitiveness and it's all about economic development and growth. We're in crisis. In case anybody hadn't noticed what's happened in 2020, we're in a huge crisis. Now, we can go back to business as usual. It's really easy. Go back to doing exactly what we did before. Personally, I'm not sure that's sustainable. I think when we do place branding, we shouldn't just do it from an economic perspective. We need to think about how it's going to benefit people from socio-cultural and environmental perspectives as well. And that way we can ensure that our brand hopefully has more relevance to all of our stakeholders and gets more stakeholder buy-in. Place branding at a national level can be used to help a nation's exports. But in general, whatever the size of place, we need to think about a place that's attractive first and foremost for people to live in and work in, invest in, and then study and visit. But it should be about the residents first. And if we want to do it and get it right and rebuild from crisis, we can help create, if we're in a developing nation, or if we're in a developed nation who went from over-tourism to under-tourism overnight to no tourism, we can use it to help increase our employment opportunities and also to preserve and enhance the natural and cultural heritage of a place. But be careful. Be careful about getting it too right, because we can end up then the other extreme, over-tourism. If anyone saw the popular and social media in 2017 that was dubbed the summer of over-tourism, crowds and crowds of people crammed into tiny spaces, even big cities, Dubrovnik completely taken over because it got well known through Game of Thrones. So we see so many efforts of our place branding leading to discontent among our stakeholders. Does a tourist want to go to a place that's packed in? Did you see the pictures on social media of the queue to reach the top of Mount Everest? It was unbelievable. You think over-tourism only happens in cities? Think again. So my view is it's not about selling. It's got to be about overall place management. Otherwise, we end up not rebuilding properly. We don't innovate our way out of crisis. And if we do it too well, we need to stop focusing just on year-on-year growth targets. Yes, at the moment, if you've got zero tourism, we need it to grow from zero. But do we have to go year on year, grow more? Why don't we think in terms of any form of desired outcome, be it for people to live in, work in, study, invest in, or visit a place, that we can reach a point of sufficiency where we don't want to grow. We don't want to compete anymore. We've got it right. We can grow our income through the number of people we have there. If people are happier in our place, they might spend more time there, spend more money there, invest in it, visit it more frequently, spend more money when they're there. So we can grow and do well without just focusing purely on economic growth. As I say, I'm a member of the senior fellow of the Institute of Place Management. We also have a journal, the Journal of Place Management and Development, and there's a lot of these discussions available there, and also, on our website. And there's my Twitter handle. So I'm going to turn my phone back around the right way, try and share my screen. And say, there we are. That's me done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heather. And now we're going to go into a poll for our audience. We want to hear from you. What do you think is the unique selling point of where you are situated? Let's see, the people, the food, the events, the geography, the culture, the business. What do you think is the unique selling point of where you are situated? We'll wait for a couple more of our answers to come in here. Let's see what we got. This one's kind of hard. I'm not too sure which one I would choose. Let's see what we got. Geography. Very interesting. Very interesting. And then next is tied. Okay, so I would like to welcome back our speakers to the screen, as well as Dr. Johan Renaud to moderate the session.
Hello again.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this very good session. Thank you, Renaud, for waking up so early, and Heather for not going to bed so late. It's 3 or 4 a.m. in China and getting late in Greece. So we'll get right to the discussion. Renaud, and we've had questions that came up already in the Q&A, but feel free to add more questions. And one question that I thought that was very interesting is, when you brand a virtual place, how would you approach differ? And I think that's for me, I found that question very interesting in terms also of COVID-19 and the restriction we have with traveling. So how do you, and now you go on to virtual, and some places might want to create virtual space. So I guess that's two different questions that are kind of related in the midst of this current crisis. How can you use place branding to still encourage and advertise your place when people should really not come to your place? That's a big dilemma here. So any thoughts on this? And then we can then unpack the virtual place question.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm happy to jump in. I think it's a great question. So here, as you said, we talk about a place that exists, and we want to use place branding virtually because people cannot come now. But we here in this case, we would still hope that we will be attractive to have people coming and to have some exchanges. I think here there are different possibilities. If you look at tourism now, it's exactly what different organizations started in the place branding, for example, of Switzerland. They say, okay, you should dream now and travel later. And for example, this is quite easy to say, but then you can really have a whole package of things you can do with this. And you would maybe focus a bit less on the specific marketing aspects, the pricing and things like this, but emphasize a bit more on storytelling about the place, on triggering curiosity about the place. So I think you still have possibilities. Then for the economic development sector, for example, I would use really virtual tools to inform better, because if you look at the business decisions and how people decide where they innovate, it's normally a quite well-informed decisions. So here, often we are a bit old school and we wait to have a first meeting to explain and to talk about the place. And here I think we should now adapt and try to have those kind of meetings. Even the roadshow we do for investors, we could have them online. So I think we should really do what we do normally online, but then also try to rethink, because we cannot do exactly the same. And maybe here we should look for more innovation. And I think to have new ideas, we could think about having hackathons to find, for example, new ideas and new ways of doing things. Because of course we could do exactly the same online, but it would not really have the same appeal. But I think there are possibilities online. I think the specificity in comparison with digital marketing is really not to forget about the place. As I said, the place, that's also where people live, and try really to engage with them and also make them participate online and organize things online with the people, because we could really gather more online and maybe more efficiently than some of the existing tools we have. But we should really try to create this virtual space, because in my view, it's not developed yet. The online gathering, it's still a bit old school, a one-to-one webinar or things like this.
I think you should try our conversation starter, Renaud. That's a good one for a conference.
Started,
yeah.
Still a learning journey.
Yeah, that's very good.
I think I have 2 points on that. One is we need to distinguish between the online brand of a physical place. And I think the question, which was about branding a virtual space. Yeah. So Greece, for example, when people couldn't travel here, the Greek National Tourism Organization did a wonderful video, similar, as you said, to Switzerland. You can't come, but have a dream, have a look at us, remember us, travel when you can. And it was a lovely video, and it made a lovely online presence. And I think that we should learn from this pandemic. We should learn from the fact that actually virtual reality has been allowing people to travel to places for many years now. We've seen a lot of museum tours, for example, yes, that have been available for ages, so people are only using them now. They can't travel there. But the concept of branding a virtual space, somewhere that doesn't exist, an online university, for example, is no different, to my mind, to branding any other type of place, if you get it right and follow the principles.
Thank you. And so the questions are coming in, so keep asking and bringing the question on the Q&A. And I think there's, yeah, something that Renaud, that you mentioned, I agree. It's also to create things online for the resident and putting the resident back at the center. And I've also noticed this in different events that we've run. Some work well, and you try to have a more global audience, which is fine. But also like specific event online that's for specific places, those are working also quite well, because I think people have still this sense of community of like, hey, I'm here geographically. I want to connect with other people that are here geographically. I think that's a good point. And here I have a question from Darcy, who's asking, isn't Geneva an example of leaving the public out of the loop? Renaud, you mentioned Geneva at first, and so Darcy is wondering if it's a bad example for what should have been done. He says he has recently initiated place branding marketing initiative to sell itself as a science hub, although this obviously doesn't speak much citizen in Geneva. And I think this, I've actually, I'm not a place branding expert, but I've seen this in different areas where you look at ads on internet on this place and you're like, wow, I wish I would live there, but it's so disconnected with the experience of the people.
Yeah, so thank you for this question. I think Geneva is a special case, and they have the luxury of actually being already a very strong brand, because they have great attributes. They are quite well known abroad, even internationally. Some survey even said that they are more famous than Switzerland in some countries, because people know Geneva but not Switzerland. But then in terms of structure of place branding, of strategy, I think they're still not advanced yet. And indeed, I would say that they don't yet involve the citizens and the residents enough. And what you can see is, I think that they have discussions now to really relaunch this kind of process towards something more inclusive. But exactly now, it's a bit segmented. So you have each actor trying to promote the place with some campaigns, and suddenly they have, for example, a budget for a new project on one of the facets of Geneva. And I think, of course, there is no process yet that would really make sure everybody is included. And on the one hand, it's segmented, so some sectors are not included, but then also the resident thing, it's quite important. And as you said, the science, I think it's a good point, because Geneva, it's a bit like Switzerland, because Switzerland is known for the cliche, like in Canada, I'm sure people know about the fondue, about the chocolate, but not enough for innovation. And Geneva, it's a bit the same in the sense that Geneva is known for the international Geneva, for a great place to visit, a high quality of life, but not so much for the innovation side. But you also have great attributes. You have the CERN, and you also have lots of science. And I think now what we can see, as Darcy mentioned, is maybe they started a bit too much with top-down things for the moment. And I hope they will have more inclusiveness also to talk with the residents. And maybe the residents have another opinion and they say, yeah, but actually science is not the big thing in Geneva. But then you have to really integrate this in the message and maybe try to promote it a bit differently, because you should be, and that's quite important in place branding, be authentic. Because if now you pretend it's the place for science and then you come and people visit and they can see it's not true, I think it's the worst. So I think here we have really to learn and to really take this very honest approach.
Yeah, and then it'll be just kind of embarrassing for the place and for people living there, and it will probably backfire. And that ties in with the presentation we had yesterday about in public relation and communication, and the importance of authenticity and so that your communication and place branding is also a communication exercise that need to stem out of authenticity. And I have other questions that are coming in, and I think that ties in with what Renaud mentioned earlier about the importance of strategy before implementation. And as you say, often we just want to jump into implementation. Hey, what's a nice logo for this area? What's a nice website, without having this strategy? And the question is from Paula. She's asking, in your opinion, how important is design in the place branding process? And I think here, obviously, we have to understand design in this idea of problem solving and creating a map. And I guess it ties into strategy. So how important is this in place branding process?
I'd like to jump in here, if I may, because I think that if we involve all stakeholders, engage them properly, don't just pay lip service to it, that we include urban planners, that we include architects, that we consider the sensory aspects of the place. How do people negotiate their way around it? In a world now of social distancing, if we've got a new normal, or if we don't want to go back to business as usual, we might have to think how we flow people around our places, how we manage congestion, how we spread people around our city or our museum or our attraction. We need to think, so we have to properly involve. If we get that right from the beginning, then you've got a chance. But what we don't do very well is manage that process, not just Geneva. Let's not just kick Geneva. I think there are very, very, very few examples of place branding where there has been appropriate engagement with all stakeholders. So you don't end up, as we said, of people disconnecting with the brand, either people who live there or who visit. You know, go and show me a beautiful deserted Greek beach, and then I get off the cruise ship at Santorini and I can't breathe because I'm in a crowd of so many people. And I spend an hour just walking up a hill to take a picture and walk back down to the boat again. Don't show me a picture of a deserted beach, but don't show me pictures of crowds. Manage the process better. So I think if we locate branding in marketing and marketing in management, we don't make those mistakes. Unfortunately, because place branding is often undertaken by governments, they give a load of money to a destination marketing organization and say, get me X number of tourists and get me more next year. That's what happens in the real world. I don't think it should happen.
Yeah, so I think that's the importance of strategy, bringing the stakeholder together, and that's a tough one, to bring all those different people of governmental level and people involved in the town, and probably with also different political opinion and different vision for the future, and then to bring this together. But I think, as you guys mentioned, the importance of strategy, of design before implementation. And we have one last question here before we wrap up. And I'm going to let Neil Beecroft I'm allowed him to come and talk.
Thanks
And
a lot.
ask, I don't know if we can start your video, but yeah, feel free to ask your question. We can hear you. Hi, Neil.
Hi there. Thank you very much for the presentation. Fortunately, only got to see the end. I'm working from anywhere, so on the move. Yeah, it was, I think, related to both speakers. So we have a very interesting topic of discussion like today and the last days is Switzerland may well be the only open ski resort during Christmas time. So you have a situation where not far away from where Dr. Vuignier is born, Chamonix, which may see a knock-on effect versus Verbier on the Swiss side, who is going to actually gain all their clients. But this, over the next years to come, could have an enormous impact on just a couple of days, where a central decision is given by the Republic of France versus actually one of the states in Switzerland, Valais, which was number 3 in terms of the highest COVID cases a couple of days ago. So the importance of this place branding and strategy, where we're really seeing, and this is your point of view of how a place branding geography, I could see, put so much importance in the end, where maybe 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers separate both ski resorts, and really your analysis on how Switzerland potentially being the only place where people will ski over Christmas can play a role in the next years to come.
Thank you, Neil, for your question. And Neil, we also look forward to your session tomorrow night. So Renaud or Heather, any response?
Well, I would say quickly, it doesn't matter what it's about. If it's for people to ski or study or invest, 2 competing cities within one country, let alone in 2 different countries, even if they're only 10 or 20 kilometers apart, will always be competing with each other. Appropriately target your markets. But I think if it's going to be the only open resort in a place that's had a high spike in cases, what they need to do is really promote and focus the branding at the moment. And I think for tourism generally next year, on safety and security to allay people's fears that if they travel, they're going to be okay.
Thank you, Renaud. Some last thought?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this question. So maybe briefly, I think you can really, of course, the decision of closing or opening the ski resort can have a big impact, especially in the short run, in terms of who can come and how many clients you can get in. But I think the story and the key asset will be decided by what do you do with this, because you could have really also people also bashing Switzerland because maybe we are not strict enough and we still open. So it could also be something very bad as a reputation. But then you can also explain more and really try to use it as something like, oh, even in hard times, we still have places where you can enjoy because we have strict measures. I think it's all about what do you do with this? And you should really make sure to have an overview of how will it affect your brand image in the future? Because if you don't, you will end up in a very short-term marketing perspective and trying to gather as many visitors as possible. But I think it can also be damaged if you don't have really the overview of the process and what it can mean. But I think here, the most important is really to communicate, to inform, and really to care about the experience. What will be exactly the experience of the people deciding to go to Switzerland, to a ski resort, if it's open in these very hard times? And what are they going to tell about, for example, competing places like Chamonix or things like this? I think you really should just make sure you have a strategic thought before anything, because a decision is a decision, but then you should really think about what to do with this.
Thank you. And so we arrived to the hour, but we have one last question here from Pascal, who's asking on the topic of overcrowding. What about the syndrome of Instagram photos, and try not to share good places to preserve a great place from this phenomenon?
Yeah.
So let's stop putting pictures of your area.
The problem is that it's too easy to geotag to a location now and share it on social media. So little known places, even the top of Mount Everest is having a queue of people to get to it. We've seen beautiful pictures of lilac fields, again, with people queuing to get in, trampling the farmers' crops, and they're saying, right, no more. So what ends up happening is, I think places should harness the power of social media. Place managers need to get on to the fact that other people are getting involved in the branding process by how they display the place. And they need to know what's going on social media about their place. And a lot of the time, the brand managers do not check social media for what people are saying about the place. So, and I think that if you do that, it solves the problem, because then you know where there's a problem before it becomes too bad.
Yeah, Renaud.
And then here, maybe one point. I think, again, if you have really a long-term perspective, you should be happy that people really put really a lot of images about the place, even if it's a secret spot. I think you should really remember place branding, place marketing, you try so hard to have attention. So then when you have it, you should really do something out of it. And here, I think the question is more, how do you make sure that you don't have over tourism? And here, I mean, we have different tools, and you can think about pricing, about incentives, about repartition, about some rules. And I think we can be very clever about this, because if you think about marketing, you also have luxury things that cannot be sold everywhere, even if everybody would like to buy the product. So I think we should just have a long-term perspective, because if now we are too harsh against over-tourism, we could really do things that we will regret in a couple of years, because it's always good to have people mentioning the place, willing to visit the place. But it's not good if it's only if they come all together at the same time, and then you have damages. But I think you can really anticipate this very strategically.
Yeah, I think it's a good problem to have.
Well, it's not a good problem to have, because the visitor experience is bad. And you get residents protecting, telling tourists to go home, and those images spread on social media. Who wants to go to a place where they're told to go away?
But it's too late. It means it's too late, because it means you let them come and then you realize it's a problem. You don't anticipate this well, because people don't come just like this suddenly. I think we could really do more in terms of anticipation strategy and having policies and incentives to do
Yeah,
better.
I meant
know
to
the
say
proof of
in
concept is great, for example, but maybe now we can still improve, but to avoid some problems we could have anticipated more. Don't you think, Heather?
Well, I've spent the last 2 years working on this, and there's a whole section freely available. You don't have to be a member on the IPM website under the Visiting Places Special Interest Group. And there's a whole toolkit that I put together on coping with success. And there's all freely available resources on there that links a load of real life case studies from the natural and the built environment. So access them, find out.
Thanks. So thank you both. I think we could keep talking, and what I meant was more not a good problem to have, but instead of having no one talking about your place, if you have a lot of people talking about your place, and if you have in place the strategy that Renaud talked about, then you can kind of make sure there's not overcrowding, but you put in place a strategy so that the tourist experience becomes very enjoyable. So I'd like to really thank you both for this very fascinating discussion, and more questions are coming in. We'll have to have both of you can answer it and type the answers to this, and we'll move on with the program. And Tiffany have some announcement before we go through the next part of the evening. But thank you again, and I think I can say to both of you, you've deserved a good night sleep now. You were brave to stay awake and to wake up in the middle of the night. Thank you so much for this this session. And I would like to say this is my very, very last external speaking event, because I'm giving up. I'm retiring in 4 weeks' time at the end of the year. So I'm delighted. We are honored. Yeah. You are my swan song. I am delivering a research seminar next week, but that's for our own IPM members. So this is my last one to the big wide world. And what a good one. So that's the perfect one to end. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Great to have you.
Thank you so much, speakers, and congratulations on your retirement, Heather. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us for our first session of the day. We will take a short break, and we'll be starting again at 9:30 European time and 12:30 Pacific time to learn about demystifying artificial intelligence. Thank you so much, and we will see you shortly.